All right, 2 minute coffee, peace, and war times. All right, we back with part 2. So I wanted just to separate it because just listening to what he had to say as a class, it was really his own class, and we just pretty much looked at it. So now we're finna add in a couple of things, and which is very important. All right, so we're gonna start like this. We're gonna start from the nature books. Let me know if y'all can see that.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. It says, listen to reason. The Caucasian Bible, the Genesis of the Old Testament portion, these 3 branches, original man, are called Ham. The Phoenician race, Shem, the Indian race, and Japheth. The Mongolian race is interpreted by Nupu in the form of novenary science, Noon, by Afro Unu, because the flood of Noah, who was Zoar, monkey, Zupu, happened approximately 18 million years ago at 0.6 west on the smash circular order. All right, so we're going to start that and set the precedents. And then we're going to jump into what I did earlier. All right. Let me know when y'all can see that. All right. It says, what are the descendancy charts of Gog and Magog in the Bible? I need a clean chart. In the Bible, Magog appears first as descendants of Japheth, the son of Noah, in the Table of Nations, Book of Genesis, chapter 10. Gog appears later in prophecy in Book of Ezekiel and again symbolically in Book of Revelation. Below is a clean texture chart separating genealogical descent, Genesis, and prophetic association, Ezekiel and Revelation. All right, so you got Noah, Shem, Ham, Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tyrus. Source, Book of Genesis 10:2. So biblically, Magog is the son of Japheth. Japheth is the son of Noah. So we know, according to Noon, Magog is who?
The Mongolian.
There you go. So we finna solve all of that because they don't know. He don't realize he a Mongolian that's part of that. That's why he's up here basically breaking it down as best as he can. So the Mongolian is Japheth. And we know that Japheth came by way of Noah, which was the flood, which is 6 eat the promise. All right, so we identifying who Magog is. Now the prophecy structure in Ezekiel prophecy, Gog, which is the Mongolian, is described as a rule over lands associated with the descendants of Japheth. Gog is the chief prince of Meshech, Tubal. Allied nations, Gog's confederation is Magog. Persia, which we know Persia is Iran. All right? Cush and Put, I think, are also names of Ham's sons, but they say that Cush, because you remember it's 2 types of Cush. You got the Cush they spell with a C, and then a Cush with a Kuwsh, which is associated with Nubia and all of that. So it's 2 different kind of Cushes. All right, so this here is mankind people. Gomer, Beth, Targama, source Book of Ezekiel 38, chapter 38, 39. Important book. Point, God is not listed in Genesis genealogy. He appears only later as a leader or title connected with the land and the people of Magog. All right, end time symbolic use of Revelation. End time symbolic use. In apocalyptic language, nation of the earth, called collectively Gog and Magog, source Book of Revelation 20, verse 8. Here the term represent rebellious nations gathered for battle, not a family lineage. Summary chart. So this the summary, went through all that. If you want, I can also show you the full Japheth bloodline chart, including Gomer's descendants, the historical nation scholars linked to Magog, or the rabbinic versus Christian interpretation of Gog and Magog. Where is the land of Gog and Magog in the Bible today? That's what I asked you. The Bible does not give a modern country name for Gog and Magog, but it gives geographic clues. From these clues, historians and biblical scholars generally place the region in the far north of Israel around the Black Sea and Caucasus region. Here's the clean breakdown. Book of Ezekiel 38:39, Magog is described as a land from the far north relative to Israel, associated with Meshech and Tubal, connected with a coalition including Persia, Cush, Put, Gomer, and Beth Targama. This tells us the invasion comes north of Israel. Most common historical identification. Ancient historians such as Flavius Josephus, y'all know who that is, identified the people of Magog with the Scythians, nomadic tribes who lived north of the Black Sea and the Caucasus Mountains. That region today includes parts of what? Russia, southern Russia, Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan. Now this is part he was right, because he did say Russia would be a part of that Great War. All right, so the Bible is correct, and so is the Mongolian. The territory is basically the Caucasus region between the Black Sea and Caspian Sea. Visual map simplified. From Israel looking north, this is how you know. Remember, it's going to be north. So this is north of Israel. Look, Turkey. He was talking about Turkey, right? Remember, he kept saying Turkey, but that was Turkey. He kept saying Turkey. Why? Because Turkey is north. The Caucasus Mountains is north. Magog region, ancient Scythia, north. Modern equivalents, southern Russia, Ukraine, Caucasus Mountains. All right? Key biblical players in the Gog War. According to the book of Ezekiel 38, the leader is Gog, a ruler or title. Land is Magog. Allies mentioned: Persia is modern Iran, Cush is Sudan, Ethiopia region, Put is Libya, North Africa, Gomer is Anatolia in Europe, Beth Togarmah is Armenia and Turkey. Important note, there are three main interpretations among scholars. Russia, Eurasia theory, Magog equals Russia and former Soviet regions. Anatolia theory, Magog equals area and Turkey. Symbolic interpretation of the book of Revelation 20 verse 8. Gog and Magog represent all rebellious nations, not a specific country. All right, so we got the summary. We're going to get past that. If you want, I can also show you something interesting most people miss. The very old Jewish tradition that connects Gog to the Khazars, the Alexander the Great Gog and Magog Gate, legend in the Caucasus, or a full migration map from Noah to Japheth to Magog to Scythian to modern nations. I said, okay, according to Noon Science said this: the religion of Noah and his three sons was pantheism. The three sons of Noah was the spirit evolution forces were Ham, the Phoenicians, which was Arabs, Shem, the East Indians or the Hindus, and Japheth, the Mongolians. So hypothetically, if this was the case, where would that place be that Mongolians are identified as Japheth? How would that map look biblically in modern times? If we follow the hypothetical framework, remember, you got to always speak like hypothetical, so the chat won't sit there and try to follow the programming. This is how you hack the chat. Hypothetical framework you mentioned from Noon Science, where Noah is evolutionary spiritual force, Ham is the Phoenicians, Shem is the Hindus, Japheth equals Mongolians. Then we can map the biblical genealogy in the book of Genesis 10, the table of nations, unto a modern geographic model. Important, the Bible itself does not say these exact modern identities, but we can build a comparative map to visualize the idea. You see, it came back and added that. Nobody asked it that. Okay, no one asked you that. All right, okay, biblical structure, Genesis table of nations. Noah, he's got Ham, Shem, and Japheth. The son of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Divine, Tubal, Meshech, Tares. Source, book of Genesis 2. If Japheth equals Mongolian / what? Northern Asian peoples, Then the Japheth territory was stretched across the what? The northern belt of Eurasia. Remember, in the Bible, when it talks about the war of Gog and Magog, they was gonna come from the north and meet in Megiddo, which is a big valley in Israel. They all gonna come there. Eastern Europe, Russia, Siberia, Mongolian equals what? Northern China. See, this is the Mongolian, Japheth. That's who they're gonna be seeing the most of, because there's more of them than anybody else. China alone got over 1 billion people ready to fight. All right? So the map would look like this geography. West Eurasia, Black Sea and the Caucasus, Magog, Meshech, and Tubal. This is like the top going north. Central Eurasia, Caspian, and the Kazakhstan, Madar and Goma. Eastern Eurasia, Siberia, and Mongolia. Japheth line extended into what? Mongolic peoples. So that's who gonna be giving Israel the run for their money is Japheth. That's the Gog and Magog. Because what they're doing now, which we spoke about it last night, when Trump now hit Venezuela, that hurt China and Russia. If they get the oil from Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, I think where Iran has their little strait for oil, that's gonna mess China and Russia up again.
Yep.
Which is who? Japheth and Nun. This is what's gonna make Japheth and them come into the war, because as Anoop beautifully put it, you gotta keep the oil is the what? The light of the world, or the life of modern world, of these countries. They need oil. They not gonna let Trump them take all of the oil. Because if they do that, there's nothing in it. They might as well just wave the white flag. You need that oil.
And they not giving up like that.
It's war purposes. That oil is used for not just pleasures and cooking, but for war. That's why the oil is so serious. All right? Now, simplified visual belt. Mediterranean. Remember, because the Caucasian come from the Levant. That's the Mediterranean. They going back home war style. Turkey, Caucasus, southern Russia, Kazakhstan, Siberia, Mongolia, and northern China. This entire northern band will represent what? Japheth territory in that hypothetical model. How Magog fits this? Magog is a son of Japheth in Genesis. So in this model, Noah, Japheth, northern Eurasian peoples, Mongolic line, Magog, steppe tribes. All right? Historically, this region was dominated by steppe nomadic empires. I'm gonna break down what this is, because I had to look this up to what a steppe tribe was, or the steppe tribes. Historically, this region was dominated by nomadic empires, Scythian, Huns, Turks, Mongols, which all live across the Eurasia steppe corridor. Eurasia is really the combination of Europe and Asia. Europe is really not a continent, if y'all didn't know that, for the listening audience. They separated that to make it look like the Caucasian had a home on a continent. The Caucasian as a whole came from the Mediterranean Asian islands. They had no landmass bigger than those islands. So the older term is Eurasia. As you can see, the word Europe is in there. Euro-Asian, Caucasus Asian. All right, they are not from Europe. Modern country map, if this model was used. Japheth belt could include parts of Russia, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, northern China, inner Mongolian region, Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia. Why? Because the Caucasian, this is not from there. All that was called Eurasia. Mongolians is considered Asians. Orient. They from that part of the world. Asia. Basically the entire Eurasian steppe region north of the Middle East. Look at the chat go. Why some scholars link Japheth with the steppe people? Why? Here we go. The nations listed with Japheth and Genesis are often historically connected to what? Indo-European and steppe culture which spread across northern Eurasia. Which is what? Madai, which is Medes or Iran area. Javan of the Greeks. Now they changed it. They used the Medes in the Old Testament when they talk about the Greeks. But the Greeks ain't from there. So if you don't know your history, they'll throw you with this crap. Magog, Scythian, steppe tribe. This matches the northward and eastern expansion zone above the Middle East, which is what Noon said. Simple map summary. Ham, Africa, Levant, which is not really true. All right? Ham is the Arab. All right? This is why Africa is not mentioned and put in the original things, and even in Noon, we don't do that. Ham is not Africa. Ham is Arabia. All right, Shem, Middle East, Persia, India, Japheth, Northern Eurasia, Russia, Mongolia. If you like, I can also show you something of interest that relates to your question. The ancient maps used by early historians like Flavius Josephus for Japheth's descendants, how Magog was linked to Scythians and later Mongol steppe tribes, or a full migration chart from Noah to Japheth to Magog steppe empires. This is what I said. I researched the steppe people who were united under who? Genghis Khan and Mongolian himself. What I want to explore is if the Mongolians such as Japanese, Chinese, Koreans are the ones I'm interested in. These are the ones that are to fight in the Israel Revelation 16:16. So this would mean that Asia would eventually get into this war with Israel, as the current war with Iran will cause them to get involved based on taking these lands, what? Oil fields, which are affecting what? Asia and Russia. And you can see the word Asia and Russia. I told you, they not from there. Not forgetting America has seized Venezuela's oil, and that has affected these countries as well. Once again, what Anoop said, without the oil, you don't have the light of the world, which is the blood, the life of the planet Earth. These dummies don't even know what they're doing. They're going to cause the Earth to go into a state of shock and hemorrhaging because she's losing too much blood. And when she hemorrhages, those turn into earthquakes, which is a form of shaking and going into shock.
Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people know it or not. I don't know if y'all heard, but it's a lot of sinkholes going on in Florida, taking place right now, and a lot of people is vacating from that state.
No, I ain't hear about that. I seen that China was trying to stop a sinkhole by throwing a bunch of trees in a hole because the water is disappearing and all the other stuff. But no, I didn't hear about that. They don't. That's a scary thing. I hope I never have to deal with that. All right. So what you exploring? Chat said what you exploring is actually very common prophetic interpretation. Those scholars debate it. Let's walk through it step by step using the biblical structure and then compare it to the modern geopolitical map. I'll keep the chart style so the logic is clear. The Bible prophecy you mentioned, the key path is in the book of Revelation 16:12. Revelation says the Euphrates River dries up to prepare the way for the kings of the east. Then verse 16 says the armies are gathered at Armageddon. So the prophecy structure is world powers, kings of the earth, kings of the east, gather for war at Armageddon. And remember, Trump has told the military that they fighting this war to help Jesus come back. And Israel saying they Messiah coming back, and so is the Muslim. So this is a religious war. All right? And the only way they're going to be able to make the Muslims go all the way hard body, they're going to have to get at that oil, and they're going to eventually have to destroy one of Islam's holiest places. A lot of people think it's going to be that Al-Aqsa mosque over there in Jerusalem. It's highly likely they will do so. All right? Armageddon itself refers to the Megiddo region in northern Israel, a historic battle crossroads. 2, what kings of the east means geographically. From the perspective of Israel, right? East means Iraq. See, these are the things they're finna get into it. All this is East Israel. North of them, Iraq. They already attacked Iraq multiple times. Now they attacking Iran. They're gonna get at Asia, China, Korea. They're not gonna let them. They're gonna these individuals are most likely gonna come to them because they're a little bit too far away. All right, Korea and Japan. All of these are Arabs and Mongolians or Phoenicians. This is Shem and Japheth together. So the Eastern world from the biblical viewpoint is Asia. See, right back to that again. If your hypothesis applied, if we follow your exploration, Japheth equals Mongolic, Northern Asian peoples. Then the Japheth region will cover the Eurasian steppe and East Asia. That's all of the millions and millions of people that they say supposed to meet up in Israel and go dolo. Possible map: Japheth zone, Eastern Europe, Russia, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, China, Korea, and Japan. These regions historically connect through the steppe migrations. The same corridor produced the Scythians, the Huns, like Attila the Hun, a vicious Mongolian. The Turks, the Mongols, Genghis Khan, another vicious Mongolian. Interestingly, medieval Europeans even believed the Mongols were God that made God when they invaded Europe. And they were correct. The prophetic military path. In Revelation, the Euphrates River dries up to allow armies from the east to move what? West. That river historically separates Mesopotamia from the Middle East, from Persia, Asia. So the route looks like this: China/East Asia, Central Asia, Iran, Iraq, Euphrates crossing, because that's what they got to cross. Syria, and then Israel. All these people are going to be up against Israel because Israel started this dumbness. Trying to follow the Bible is going to end up a suicide mission because they can't handle all these people. Why some modern interpreters connect Asia? Some prophecy interpreters believe the kings of the East could involve large Asian powers because Asia holds the largest populations and armies. Russia and China dominate Eurasia. The prophecy mentions massive armies. Revelation 9 mentions 200 million soldiers in some interpretations. But this is interpretation, not a direct biblical statement. That's because the Bible didn't have numbers that ran up in the millions. Here we go. Your oil geopolitical observation. Your geopolitical observation is actually something analysts discuss. The Middle East sits on the largest oil reserves, key trade corridors. Major Asian economies rely heavily on what? Middle East oil. Y'all got to go back to what Anoop said last night. and then come back to this video because it's gonna make sense. This is why the word oil is in every conversation when it comes to America and war. When they took out Saddam Hussein, they talking about, oh, they did that because they found gold in Babylon and they found Gilgamesh's body buried in that. Man, they want the oil. You can't run no country off of Gilgamesh. At best, you can do some genetic things, but they know that the oil is what keeps the power on. Don't forget that. All right? Major Asian economies rely heavily on Middle East oil. These are the countries that rely on it. In America and Israel is trying to hit the Middle East so they can do what? Regime change and keep the change. They're gonna rob you and still keep the change. That's what this is about, oil. So if they keep at what they doing, China, Japan, Korea, India, all of them are what part of the Asian world. They're gonna have to come together and say, yo, we're gonna have to stop these people. Because if not, everybody's country gonna collapse. Because Israel's main goal is to make sure everybody falls into a state that's less than them. Then they can bully you like 50 Cent. And sit back and use drones and everything else to control you. That's their mission. It's always been about the oil, the life of the planet, because the human race been programmed to depend on the oil, and to get the oil, you need infrastructure. You need those powerful drills and things that the Caucasian them have that most other races don't have access to. And once you put that infrastructure in place, and you need weapons and all that stuff, you need the oil to trade. You need blood money, Earth's blood money to trade. So now you're dependent. So now Israel knows this. They following the book. Don't let them fool you that the Jews is not following the New Testament, because it's there. We're using the New Testament and showing you the Jews is following it. So don't let them tell you that the New Testament, oh, they don't believe in it, it's crap. They following it. Israel is following it. So conflicts affecting Iran, Gulf oil routes, or shipping lanes could draw Asian powers into the region. That's what Israel wants. This is why the Asian guy said they want America to fail, meaning lose the power to be able to fight on the ground and fight people in America who have now refused to go in the military to fight for something that they don't even believe in. So America, this is why he's saying America won't matter in the scheme of things, because of most of American elite is transferring the money into Bitcoin and transferring all of their companies to Israel. So what, if that's the case, only one that's gonna survive is the military and people who got bunkers and stuff like that. And America gonna turn on itself. That's what they want. All right. However, the Bible itself does not mention the oil as the cause. Yes, it does. It used the sons of oil. It used what Anoop brought up in Zechariah in the olive branches. It does. The chat that doesn't understand that. This is a modern geopolitical interpretation. No, it's not. Because politics is religion. Important biblical detail often missed. In the prophecy, all nations eventually gather, not just Asia. Revelation says spirits go out to the kings of the whole world to gather them for battle. But again, see, this is where it's messing up. All nations can't get involved in a war. Only the ones that did the book and what the greatest oil reserves places, those nations gonna get involved. You got plenty of people around the world that ain't nowhere near modernization. They still using, straw and bamboo and all that for boats and stuff. They still fishing. So everybody is not gonna get in this war because they wouldn't fit. This is the same Noah story. All the animals on the boat lie. It's an impossibility. So the structure is Eastern powers move west, other world powers converge, armies gather in Israel to fight over what? Oil. The global map of the prophecy simplified. All right, we went through all this already. One thing that matches your thought, you notice something real. The Eurasian steppe peoples and historically unified large Asian armies. Example, Genghis Khan united Mongols, Turks, and other steppe tribes into the largest land empire in history. So the idea of a large Eastern coalition has historical precedence. All right, if you want, I can also show you 3 things that will really expand your research. All right, so what I'm gonna do is stop for a second. We're at 31 minutes. All right, so I want to show y'all what I was saying about them using the Caucasians and things for what they want to do. All right, now watch this. It's a short. So listen to this. Let me know when y'all can see that. All right, This is Rabbi Yosef. This guy has got a big mouth and he's very arrogant. Now listen what he says here.
Christians is unlike anything else. You might wonder, if Jews have a negative view of Jesus, then why would certain Christians practically dedicate their lives to supporting them and the state of Israel? Listen to this rabbi explain.
The Christians evangelists here in America, which almost all of them are Republicans, they're probably all gonna vote for Trump, and they are very pro-Israel. They are the ones that, thanks to them, United States always been with Israel in the last few decades. If you take out Christianity out of the picture, what United States has to do with Israel? The only things they are helping us is because of religion reason. But what a lot of Jews do not know is that they're not doing it for us. They are doing it only for themselves. Make no mistake. They all believe that once we will go back to the Holy Land and JC Penny will show up to redeem the world, he will put us all to be burned in hell. That's what they believe, because we never accepted him and we won't accept him. So why they want to help us to take over Israel, to win against the Arabs, make sure the Jews go? Why they pay all these organizations that sponsor Aliyah? A lot of the people who made Aliyah, it's Christian money. All the airfare, it's all come from them. There's some reform rabbis who have connection with them. They get hundreds of millions of dollars donation from them. Rabbis from Manhattan, from Texas. Why they are so generous? Why are they donating money to Israel? What do they care about Israel? The answer is because they believe the Messiah would come. They just have the wrong identity of the Messiah. That's it. They believe that it's actually JC.
So it really is quite interesting how 2 religions that fundamentally disagree so much are working together. However, the Jews believe their Messiah has not yet come, whereas Christians and Muslims believe Jesus was the Messiah. So when a so-called Messiah other than Jesus comes, it's going to be the false Messiah. But then Jesus will return and he will be the one to eradicate the false Messiah. But the difference between the Christians and the Muslims is Christians worship Jesus, whereas Muslims believe he was one of the greatest prophets and messengers, and when he returns he will exclaim that he is not God and don't worship him, but rather follow his guidance and worship God alone. And while some Zionist Jews and Christians are working together to try and speed up this process, Muslims believe that the trials and tribulations that come as a result of the false Messiah are the worst trials and tribulations that humanity will ever experience in all of human history. So we want to completely do our best to avoid that fitna, that trial. But based on what we see happening today, we are clearly reminded how that time keeps getting closer and closer.
And I just wanted, to remind and listen to audience, this is the part of what we say is the spell. That they under the spell, they are helping a group of people who in their own books said murdered their own God. and they religiously giving hundreds and millions of dollars, and the Jew is laughing at them. And he's like, why are they doing this? When we don't, and he called Jesus J.C. Penney as an insult. This is showing you this the reality of what's going on is coming out. And they got issues. All right, so I'm gonna jump back over there. I just wanted to interject that because that was important, that people understand that these people creating all of this negativity around the world so they can use that. So when you complain against them, they're gonna use Palantir, by which they doing it now. They getting at everybody through TikTok, Instagram. They made it saying May 8th, they're gonna start reading people's DMs and feeding it to the AI, and then they see something on there that appears to be illegal. They're gonna hit up how they got said that? They're gonna hit up Homeland Security. The Homeland Security gonna hit the local police department, and they gonna come see you. Right now, they trying to set Tucker Carlson up to get arrested because he been going at Trump in Israel so long. So eventually, they're gonna try to knock off Candace and Nick Fuente, all these different people, because these group of people here, the Zionists, you can tell by this guy that they don't care who they use. They taking money from people that they know they folks gloat that they took out Jesus, but they still taking their money. But you don't supposed to notice that. All right, so let me get going. All right, if you want, I can also show you 3 things that would really expand your research. The ancient map historians use Lincoln Magog to the Mongols. The very strange Alexander the Great Gog and Magog gate story in the Caucasus. The connection some researchers make between the Khazars, Mongols, Gog Magog tradition. These 3 topics actually connect directly to the ideas you're exploring. So again, Afro Unu, by way of Nupur, was right. Japheth represent the Mongolian people. I said yes, but keep it lean. Point out what is legend and what is myth. All right, so this is the breakdown. Magog is the Scythians and the steppe peoples. Biblical text in Book of Genesis 2, Magog is listed as a son of Japheth. No geographic location is given in the text. The Jewish historian Flavius Josephus wrote that Magog is the Scythians. The Scythians or Scythians live north of the Black Sea and across the Eurasian steppe, modern region, Ukraine, southern Russia, Kazakhstan. This is an interpretation by a historian, not a biblical statement. All right, later association, when the Mongol armies of Genghis Khan invaded Europe in the 1200s, some Europeans believed they were Gog and Magog, and they were. Not from the biblical context that it was those Asians that they thought was coming in the end of days, and this is probably what the Europeans believed. They was like, okay, this must be the end of the world. So when you go back and look, they done made prediction of the end of the world way back. All right, label, historical fear-based interpretation, not biblical or factual genealogy. Alexander's Gate, the Caucasus barrier. The legend, the late antiquity stories claim that Alexander built a massive wall in the Caucasus Mountains to trap Gog and Magog. Possible location linked to the story, the Derbent, Dario Gorge. These areas do have ancient defensive walls. What is historical? Those fortifications were actually built mainly by the Sasanian Persian Empire centuries after Alexander. Alexander building a wall to imprison Gog and Magog equals a legend. The real Caucasus walls is historical. So they basically saying Alexander didn't build nothing. They just gave him credit. Khazars and Gog and Magog. The Khazar Empire existed between the Black Sea, Caspian Sea from about 650 to 1000 AD. Locations: southern Russia, Kazakhstan, and Caucasus Steppe. Historical fact: the ruling elite of the Khazars converted to Judaism. Later claims: some medieval writers speculated Khazars were related to Magog tribes because of their steppe location. Label speculation not evident. Clean summary: biblical text. Magog is a descendant of Japheth. Historical interpretation: Josephus linked Magog to Scythian steppe tribes. Let's look at this in summary. All right, if you want, I can also show you one very important geographic detail most prophecies especially miss. Why the Euphrates River in the book of Revelation is the real strategic gateway between Asia and Israel. It changes how the kings of the East passages is usually interpreted. I said, yes, I noticed you left out the Quran version as well. He said, yes, the Quran also contains a God and Magog tradition, and it is actually where the Alexander Wall story becomes most detailed. I'll keep it lean and label clearly what its scripture, legend, and later interpretation. The Quran account appears in the Quran Surah Al-Kahf, Surah 1883 to 98. It describes a ruler called Dhul Qarnayn who traveled to distant lands and builds a barrier to stop destructive pride called Gog and Magog. In the Arabic, it's the Yajuj and the Majuj. Key elements in the text: Gog and Magog are corrupt tribes causing destruction. A barrier of iron and molten copper is built between two mountains. The barrier will hold until the end times when they will break through. Important point: the Quran never says the ruler is Alexander the Great. That identification came later. Exactly. Dhul Qarnayn, scholars have debated who this was. Common theory is Alexander the Great. Cyrus the Great is symbolic righteous king. The Alexander identification comes from later Islamic and Syriac literature, not the Quran itself. The Caucasus Gate story: later Islamic historians connected the Quran story to the Caucasus mountain passages. Two locations are commonly suggested: the Derby and the Darya Gorge. Both paths had ancient fortified walls controlling movement between the Eurasia Steppe and the Middle East. These fortifications, we said already, were built by the Sasanian Persians. So they're talking about Arabs. So, and I did research on this, even watching a lot of Christians and Arabs go back and forth. They call them Dawa wars. Well, some Christians speak pretty good Arabic and things and know the history of saying that wasn't true, that Alexander the Great didn't have nothing to do with that story, and that story was false. So it's a lot of historical things that these religious books state that are not historical at all, and people just believe it. All right. In Islamic eschatology, based on Hadith literature, Gog and Magog are released near the end of time and overwhelm the earth before being destroyed by God. The Quran, Gog and Magog exist and are contained. And we know that these are the Eurasian peoples, which we are the one in. That's all of them dealing with Russia and all of them, and mostly the Magog, as far as genetically, would be the Asian peoples, Japanese, Chinese, Koreans, stuff like that. So they do exist, and as far as it looks, they have not entered the war yet. So you can say that the Quran is correct. They do exist because they are the Asian people. They return in the end time. They ain't went nowhere. All right. Interesting, three religious traditions place Gog and Magog in what? The same general region. The biblical traditions say North Israel. The Islamic traditions say what? Beyond the northern mountain barrier. And if you go above Israel and them, it's the Caucasus Mountains and all that up there, correct? Y'all there?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Greek is the medieval tradition says behind a Caucasus wall. It's just the Caucasus Mountains and the Caspian Sea. That's what's really there. That region corresponds roughly to southern Russia, Caucasus, and Central Asian steppe. Clean classification. God can make God, Book of Ezekiel, Book of Revelation, and Yajuj and Majuj in the Quran. Caucasus Mountain passes step north of the Black Caspian Sea. Legend, Alexander building the barrier, which is not true. Myth and speculation, the Mongols or Khazars being literal God can make God descendants. Of course, that could be true because these races intermingle with each other through evolution. But the true Mongolian is the Asians. One final thing you might find interesting in relation to your earlier point about Asia in Revelation 16. The Euphrates River historically marked the boundary between the Roman Middle Eastern world and Asia. When that barrier disappears from prophecy, it symbolically opens the land route from Asia into the Levant. If you like, I can show you the ancient military corridor from China to Israel that armies historically used. It was sent out the Mongol Empire later controlled. I said, not yet. You said why the Euphrates River in the Book of Revelation is the real strategic gateway between Asia and Israel. Explain why you stated this. And it is fact that the river is drying up as we speak. You're referring to a key verse in the Book of Revelation. The statement about the Euphrates being a strategic gateway comes from both biblical wording and real geography. Let's break it down clearly. The actual verse, 16:12, says, the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its waters was dried up to prepare the way for the kings from the east. So the prophecy described the Euphrates dries up, armies from the east moves west, they gather at Armageddon in Israel. The Euphrates was a strategic barrier. The Euphrates River is one of the largest rivers in the Middle East. For thousands of years, it formed a natural defensive line. Historically, it separated the west of the Euphrates, the Levant, Israel, and the Mediterranean empires. East of the Euphrates, Mesopotamia, Persia, and Central Asia. Because it is wide and difficult to cross with large armies, it functioned like a military boundary. Ancient military geography. Major empires used the Euphrates as a frontier. The Roman Empire, the Euphrates marked the eastern border against the Parthian and Persian Empire. The Persian Empire used the river as a defensive line against Western invasion. Armies moving between Asia and the Levant usually had to cross at specific crosses. So the geography looked like this: Asia, Iran, Persia, Iraq, Euphrates barrier, Syria, Israel. See, all that separates them from each other. But all this is going to become obsolete, and all of those nations is going to come to Israel. Because of that, controlling the Euphrates crossing meant controlling the gateway into the Levant. Why Revelation mentions it. When Revelation says the river dries up, it symbolically removes the natural barrier preventing the eastern armies from moving west. Meaning in plain terms, barrier removed, eastern coalition can march west, armies converge in Israel. That is why the verse specifically mentions Euphrates rather than another river. Based on my research, a while back, the Euphrates still got a few years before it can be dry. So I don't think it's going to dry up unless they dam up a bunch of those dams and make it open, or they just going to use boats and stuff. They don't necessarily have to march across that river because they got technology and stuff for that now. Modern geography still matches. The same corridor still exists today. The route from East Asia to Israel, China, Central Asia, Iran, Iraq, Syria, and then Israel. This is essentially the same land routes as the ancient Silk Road corridor. 6, is the Euphrates actually drying today? Yes. Water levels have been dropping significantly, but the cause is environmental and political factors. All right, Iraq's water reserves from Tigris to Euphrates are at least in 80 years. Some stretches over the river have exposed riverbeds and islands due to lower water levels. They even found an ancient city that was covered under the river. And they've been digging and stuff. And some people claim they can hear trap angels down there. They saying some holes that open up. And they allegedly recorded sound because they believe in some angels locked down in certain parts of under the Euphrates River. We know spirits are ether. You can't lock no spirits up with no chains. But stuff that they say.
Yeah.
All right, drought, climate change, and upstream dams in Turkey and Iran are major causes. So the river is shrinking in places, but it is not dried up completely. Important distinctions. Biblical text, the Euphrates dries up during a specific prophetic event. Modern reality, the river is shrinking due to climate, dams, and water management. Those two things are often linked by prophecy interpreters, but scientifically they are separate explanations. One historical data detail that strengthens the geography. In ancient times, the Parthian Empire east of the Euphrates was known for massive cavalry armies. Roman writers feared an eastern invasion across that river. Some historians think the kings of the East imagery may reflect that ancient geopolitical fear of eastern armies crossing the Euphrates. If you want, the next thing that may interest you is something many people don't realize. The Euphrates also runs through the exact region where many of the Middle East's largest oil fields sit today. That connects the river corridor with modern geopolitical conflicts in Iraq, Syria, and Eastern Mediterranean energy routes. I say yes, list them and point out that the ones America and Israel haven't touched yet, and are these in the territory of the Greater Israel Project. So these are talking about the major oil fields and what they just mentioned. The El Omar oil field, discovered in '86. They kick out 80,000 barrels a day. Al Tanak oil field, largest Syria oil field. The Kanako gas field, the Jaffa oil field, the Ward oil field. These fields sit east of the Euphrates where most of Syria's oil reserves are located. So this is basically, they're gonna go for all of this. Because if they get these things, it's gonna make all of the nations bow to Israel. All right? Iraq to Euphrates and the Mesopotamian basin. Important fields near the Euphrates region. The Kirkuk oil field, the West Kuna oil field, the Rumelia oil field, Middle Farat oil fields, cluster of undeveloped fields with about 600 million barrels. Look at that. You know they're gonna try to get all that. Fields that the U.S. forces have been near or around. All right, so this is during the Syrian civil war. U.S. forces opened near several eastern Syrian oil sites to support Kurdish-led forces against ISIS. Examples, the El Omar oil field and the Kanoko gas field. These sites were used as military bases at times during the conflict. Fields not controlled by the U.S. or Israel. Most Middle Eastern oil fields are controlled by national governments, state oil companies, international oil companies. Examples not controlled by the U.S. or Israel. The Kirkuk field, Iraq government, Rumelia field, Iraq plus BP. And they still need to be careful because BP, I think, is either British or American oil companies. West Kunak, Iraq plus Russia companies. Many Syrian fields now under Syrian state control. No verified evidence shows Israel controlling Euphrates oil field. The Greater Israel Project. This idea comes from a political interpretation, not an official Israeli policy document. This is not true because Netanyahu was in front of the UN talking about changing the face of the Middle East. He's following that. All right, so biblical passages, God promised Abraham land between river Egypt and Euphrates River. Important distinction, biblical promise is religious text. The modern Greater Israel Project is political theory or ideological claim, but it's based on the Bible. It's a religious text, which means it's religious. Although they say it's political, it's still the same. There's no official Israeli government plan publicly called the Greater Israel Project. See, this is where the chat is being dishonest. Geographic reality, the Euphrates Energy Corridor. The Euphrates region is strategic because it sits between Persian Gulf oil basin, Iraq oil fields, Syrian oil basin, and Mediterranean export routes. That corridor links Asian energy supply routes to Europe and the Mediterranean. One important fact often missed, Syria itself does not have huge global oil reserves. Before the war, it produced 400,000 barrels a day, which is small compared with Saudi Arabia 10 million a day, US 12 million a day. The value of Syrian oil fields is regional control and logistics, not global supply. 7. Strategic corridor map simplified. Central Asia, China, Iran, Iraq oil basin, Euphrates corridor, Syria, Mediterranean. That route is why the Euphrates corridor appears in both ancient prophecy and modern geopolitics. All right, so if you want the next piece that connects directly to your earlier revelation question, is this. There are 3 ancient invasion corridors into Israel, and 2 of them run directly through the Euphrates region. That geographic detail is why many historians think the prophecy references real military routes used for thousands of years. So that concludes my presentation at this junction. What do the Ken have to say before we get out of here? We've been on here 57 minutes.
Yeah, well, it's just basically lines up and letting people know that what's happening now is in the Bible, and it's being played out, especially with this breaking down how Gog and Magog is gonna come from the north, breaking down all the Asian countries that's going to go up against Israel for trying to control the oil. So that's powerful information for everybody to know, and for individuals to stop that's claiming to be Christians to see what's really going on. But like it was stated, they won't know until that temple is built over there in Jerusalem. That's all I have, my intake on it. So
yeah, that was real good, real powerful. I loved every moment of the presentation. They setting up for for them to do exactly what that is. You could hold on. Let me share my screen real quick. There it's it. All right, there we go. Can you see?
Yes.
So this is one of the things right here. Why Iran's most dangerous weapon in this war isn't a missile, it's the wand. So that's what a lot of people don't know. The people of Iran, they're very intelligent, right? So in Iran, they the ones that gave us algebra. Now we know all of these subjects come from Africa, but as far as the modern mathematical sciences that we follow in school, they come from this area called Iran, right? So there's a lot of geniuses there, right? So they know, and they probably know this story as well, that the only way that they could win this war is if they pull one of the world powers into it. So what do they strategically do? They bring in China by currency. They know China is all about their money. And they also know, well, I don't know if they know, but in Noon, we know that the Mongolian is ran by the moon god. Okay, and then the what you call it, the Caucasian is also ran by the moon god as well. The Jews are ran by the moon god. The Caucasian in America is ran by the moon god. And on top of that, the United States of America is the moon base. And it just so happens now Gog and Magog happens to be part of the moon as well, because the Mongolian is ran by the moon. So how do you fight fire with fire? You fight the moon with the moon. You gotta put the moon again, even though the Arab has the crescent in their symbol, it's not enough. You need to have something that's going to fight this war that that's taking place. And why you
That's
doing?
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, that's where China come in at. Yeah, moon with the moon.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna just read it real quick because it's a short article. Quick answer: an Iranian official has told CNN that Tehran is considering allowing a limited number of oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz, but only if cargo is traded in what? In Chinese yuan, not US dollars. The condition, if formalized, would represent the most significant challenge to the petrodollar system in its 52-year history, striking at the financial architecture that underpins American global power rather than at U.S. military assets. You see, so they know that they can't beat America with military. They have to beat them with the money. 14 days into the war that began with U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran on the 28th of February, the strategic picture has shifted in ways that no oil price chart yet reflects. While they're reflecting here in America, every time I go to that gas station, that thing go up at least about 25 cents every time I go. While markets have focused on Brent crude's surge above $100 a barrel, the humanitarian catastrophe unfolding across the Persian Gulf region, a single sentence attributed to a senior Iranian official on Friday, may prove more consequential than any of the preceding military exchanges. So this ain't gonna be a military war for much longer. It's gonna turn into a financial war. Okay, so that's essentially that's what's gonna take place. But I also had a what you call it? I said I wasn't gonna share nothing, but I felt like this was a little bit important that we share real quick, because I wanted to bring in the fact that a lot of this stuff is done by in a cyclical sequence. So what I train my AI to do, especially when it comes to these type of things, is I train it to see the cycles or see the sequences in certain things. Okay, so real quick, I'm gonna do this real quick. Y'all can see the screen?
Yeah.
So I said, so one of my kindreds made the connection that Gog and Magog is the Mongolian race, also known as the Asians, mainly China. How does this fit our allegorical view, especially that we know that China's economy is a rival to United States and Israel in this new form of capitalism, with the fact that they are part of BRICS? Okay, so it's very important sometimes of how you word your question, because how you word your question can give you an answer that the AI is able to do it, right? So once again, you got to use the word allegorical, because that's the only way that you're gonna be able to get a truthful answer out of the AI. All right. And one of the things I know, well, we'll talk about that in a second, right? So Tar already explained most of this, right? So Gog and Magog is not a historical idea, right? So we're gonna scroll down. See, when he was talking about Flavius Josephus, right? All of this Tar already had explained, right? So why those identifications kept changing? Each era reinterpreted Gog and Magog based on the largest perceived geopolitical threat of the time. So all of this is always, like Tar was talking about earlier in the other presentation, it's all geopolitical, which means Earth's politics. Geo means Earth, political means politics, right? So Earth's politics. This is another word for Clash of the Titans. All right, I'll explain that later. But geopolitical threat of the time, right? So examples across history, right? So you got the Roman era, they were called the Scythians, right? In the Middle Ages, they were called the Mongols. This is the name that we use, right? The Cold War, they were called the Soviet Union, right? And in the modern aspect, there's Russia and China. So Gog and Magog make up Russia and China, but mainly China. Okay, this pattern tells us something important. Gog and Magog function symbolically as the great opposing power block, right? Because we know that Gog and Magog is the opposing power to the structure. That actually lines very well with your allegorical model. I know it does. How it fits the allegory you're building. In the system we've been constructing, Babylon equals the existing commercial world order. The two witnesses equals the forces introducing the new system. The beast system is the technological economic control structure, and Gog and Magog is the final coalition resisting the emergent order. So they're trying to stop this, but I don't think they're trying to stop it too much. Only for the sake of China has this system already. They have a form of social credit score and a way of tracking their own people.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? But I just think that they're resisting it because they don't want to be tracked by this overarching system. Because if Israel gains that power that we know that they may try to do, they'll be able to take over the entire world, not just United States and South America. No, China will be sucked into this whole thing as well. So that's why they're kind of fighting against it.
Yeah.
All right. So Gog and Magog represent the external geopolitical bloc challenging the dominant system, not a race, but a power alignment, where China and BRICS fit into that symbolic role. China is often viewed as a challenger to the current Western-led financial order. You mentioned BRICS, which includes China, Russia, India, Brazil, and South Africa. Their major goals. What are their major goals? Reducing the reliance on the American dollar. America doesn't want that. They will go to war for that. Okay? Building alternative trade systems, creating new development banks, forming multipolar economic structures. We see this happening all the time with them. So in an allegorical sense, some people see BRICS as representing a counter system to the Western global capitalism that resembles the Gog-Magog archetype, a coalition forming outside the dominant system. So Tar is absolutely correct in the assertion that Gog and Magog is a representation of these folks. You know what I'm saying? My only pushback is Gog and Magog is BRICS. That's my only thing. But we know that China is the one that runs that entire aspect, them in Russia. All right. Allegorical interpretation in your framework using the narrative. All right. So this is some of what we already did. Right. So Gog and Magog becomes an opposing coalition that attempts to challenge or overthrow the dominant order before the cycle completes. So Gog and Magog knows that there's a cycle happening right now, and they know that they have to stand in between United States and Israel and what they're trying to do. Right? It says why the text says from the four corners of the earth In Revelations 20, Gog and Magog are described from coming from all directions, which suggests something larger than one ethnicity or region. Symbolically, it means a global uprising or coalition of many nations. This again supports the idea that Gog and Magog are an alliance rather than a single people group. The cyclical pattern. So I train my chat to always find the patterns, because there's always a pattern. Okay, many scholars notice a repeating pattern in apocalyptic literature. Okay, this is something that Afro Unu also noticed himself. He was born with it. Okay, old system declines, new system begins emerging. Opposition coalition forms. Final conflict resolves the cycle. Right, so it's already determined in noon that right will win this war of Armageddon. So regardless of how it goes, the right side will win, whichever side that is. Gog and Magog occupy stage 3 and 4. So we are at the last stages of this thing. All right, that fits nicely, and that's why Tar also mentioned, and something I also noticed is that the book of Revelations is not in order. It's all over the place. It's scattered. And it's done that way because it needs to scatter your mind. Okay? The only thing that's in order is maybe Revelations 1, where they introduce you to John and who John is. But outside of that, everything is scattered. You'll go from 20 to 11 to 16, and you'll go back and forth, and then all of a sudden you in Ezekiel, and then you all over that. But that shows you. And I gotta give the what you call it, the what's these guys called, man, that be yelling on the corner, what they call it again?
Oh, you talking about the Hebrew Israelites?
I gotta give them credit because they know how to jump from verse to verse in their mind. They have mastered the art of that chaos. It's chaotic, to tell you the truth. It's not in sequence like that. That's why Afro Unu said that noon runs in sequence. That Bible, you be all over the place. Okay. So it says that fits nicely with the sequence we discussed earlier in Revelation 16. Key caution for the allegory: if we keep the framework intellectually strong, it's better to interpret Gog and Magog as power blocks, geopolitical coalitions, systemic resistance forces, rather than linking them to entire races or ethnic groups. It hates when I name races. That's one of the things my chat hates. It doesn't like when I group one race of people. So it always gives me this kickback. Like, oh, come on, man. We can't talk about a whole race about like that. But it's okay. I know how to keep my chat in line. All right. The biblical narrative itself describes them as nations gathered, not a biological race. Whatever. Allegorical summary. In the model you're building, Gog and Magog represents the final geopolitical resistance coalition against the emerging world order. Historically, that role shifts depending on the era. In today's geopolitical imagination, some observers see that role symbolically representing the rival, economic, challenging Western dominance, including alliances like BRICS. Okay, so I'm gonna skip down, right, a little bit, only because for time's sake, I don't want it to drag on too long, right? So it basically was saying it was going to give a parallel between the Egyptian myth of Set attacking Horus, and I trained my AI to always give these parallels, right? So the parallel is also in the Egyptian cosmic conflict between Set and Horus, right? We'll skip down a little bit. In ancient cosmology, the text connected to Set and Horus conflict, the story goes like this: Osiris is a rightful king, but is killed by Set. Okay, Set is actually the Jew at this point in time. They represent Set. They are the ones that represent Set. Okay. Set represents chaos, disorder, and rebellion against cosmic order. Horus, the son of Osiris, grows and challenges Set. A series of battles occur between Horus and Set. Eventually, Horus is recognized as the rightful ruler and order of Ma'at is restored. Right? So eventually, Set will be defeated, but not at this point in time. He will rise up and kill Osiris. Okay? So they saw this as a story. The Egyptians saw this myth not just as history, but as a cosmic pattern of cycles. Okay, this always happens over and over certain periods of time. Order challenged by chaos and then restored. Gog and Magog conflict pattern, right, in Revelations 20. All right. So basically, a period of relative order rule exists. A coalition, Gog and Magog, gathers nations. They surround the center of order, the camp of saints. The rebellion is crushed suddenly. The final phase of the cosmic order begins. So structurally, the story is also the order rebellion and then the final defeat of chaos, right? So Gog and Magog might end up, coming victorious. All right. Who knows? We gotta see. I'm gonna skip down, right? So they all I'm gonna skip down all the way, right? So they also give another parallel in the Sumerian rebellion of stones, which is Ninurta versus Asag, right? So this was another conflict, right? So I'm trying to show y'all that these are patterns, right? And this is how the moon god was able to write the book of Revelations, because it noticed the patterns. Okay, so the Sumerian story, in the myth, Asag is a monstrous being of chaos, rises against the divine order. He gathers an army as the rebellious stones. Though these stones rebel against the divine structure of the world, Ninurta battles them with divine weapons. Ninurta defeats Asag and reorganizes the stones to rebuild the world. The myth ends with cosmic order restored. Right? Structural pattern of the myth. The story unfolds in a very familiar sequence. Chaos rises against established order. Coalition of rebellious forces forms. A divine champion confronts them. A decisive battle occurs. The world is reorganized afterwards. In the last Armageddon war, they take out the entire world with it. So nothing will be restored. Okay? I think in Daniel or Matthew, which says no flesh will be saved after that final war. Okay, so basically this is just a map with them comparing all the narratives, right? You got the Egyptian myth, the Sumerian, and then you got the biblical narrative, right? They're all the same thing. Okay, so that's just basically what I wanted to show as far as patterns being shown in the biblical sense, going back to ancient Egypt, going back to ancient Samaria, which is basically all stories that come from us. And basically the negative aspect, which happens to be the moon, took those stories and gave them as manuscripts to the Caucasian race, because it was time for the Caucasian to rule. Nature allotted them 2,000 years to really, a little bit more than 2,000 years, because they've been giving us hell for a while. Ever since the 6th dynasty in Egypt, we haven't been able to comfortably rule any of our surroundings. So ever since our 6th dynasty in Africa, we were dethroned. Okay, but they took over complete rulership. Osiris actually was the one that took over complete rulership in 2,000 years ago, which happens to be 0 AD or 1 AD in the year of their Lord, which happens to be Osiris. And now Set is like, nah, I need a piece of the pie. we shall see what happens, but that's all I gotta say.
Okay. I also would like to add, it's a video I did share about the Texas Permian Basin, and it breaks down how that whole area in Florida was built on top of that Permian Basin, which was actually a salt bed, which is causing those sinkholes. So check out that video. I was like, wow. And it just broke down how the oil fields is basically from them doing all that extensive drilling, it has messed up that state.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was a deep.
Florida might really fall off the map.
Exactly. That's the same. I was like, that's what's going. They're gonna fall right in the earth.
Crazy. Well, it's some nasty things that happen in Florida anyway. But
yeah,
we gonna see what happens. But yeah,
exactly. Yep.
All right, kids. I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. Wonderful show. So we'll try to get with y'all on the next go out. True comedies.
True peace.
True peace.